Okay. So we'll be talking about the next quarter of this century. Okay, finishing the first quarter now, and the situation is serious. You know, in the world, it's very uncertain. There's the systems that we are part of are shaking themselves. There's the ecological crisis, obviously. There's the geopolitics, you are aware of that, I'm sure. And there's also the technical innovation which is hitting us. You know, some people say it's the invention of the wheel, of writing, of steam power, electricity, the phone, the internet, you know, pick any of all of them. It is a revolution for sure that you will be talking about with your grandchildren and children. You were there, right, when this happened, I think. But the good news is that the future is already here, and it's just not evenly distributed. Said who? No? Science fiction writers, readers, William Gibson. William Gibson said so. So the future is here, right? You already know what is going to collectively. You know what is going to happen. It's happening here and there, and some of the things I'll be talking about, you know more than I about. Okay, so we are here as a community. I think that's very strong proposition. I promise you and myself to leave time for questions and answers, because that's maybe the most interesting part of this talk, to see, but keep them short, the questions, and also the comments. It doesn't have to, if you have a comment at the end, I hope to leave about 10 minutes or so in my 35 minutes that I was allowed. Yeah. And so the state of the industry, I'll be mostly speaking from the agency perspective, not the perspective of freelancers, many of you are, or the perspective of the in-house teams. You are part of that as well. But what I'm talking about will be relevant for everybody, I think. And when I call the current state of the industry a design winter, everybody seems to agree with that terminology. Yes, it's difficult. Okay. So why is it difficult? Without going into great detail, there's what the Germans say, neue Sachlichkeit, nieuwe Zakelijkheid. You know, let's get down to business. Let's not deal with all this UX, you know, soft nonsense and human-centered, etc. You know, Proximus used to have a department which was called OX and UX, Operational Excellence and User Experience. I'm sure that operational excellence has become much more important now than user experience for them. Okay, that's one cause. Now, UX is also being commoditized. You know, like there are so many of us, and honestly, when I started, I felt that I was alone, and maybe I was alone. Now there's 4,000. Okay, so there's so many people out there, and the methods that we are using are standardized, right? I mean, there is a shared vocabulary. It's so easy to transfer knowledge about UX to others, all these courses there. So there's a commodification that has happened. It could also be viewed as a luxury, something that you add to a product. I just read in the newspaper that Harley Davidson lost half of its sales. You know what I'm saying? So it's a luxury product, so you leave that out. Also the growing maturity, which has to do with this commodification as well, the growing maturity of our clients. I'm talking as an agency now, where they in-house, they can do it themselves, and good for them, right? They can get people on the market, the methods are fairly widely shared, there are great bodies of knowledge. And maybe our contribution to the well-being of the world is not all that great. You know about infinite scrolling, right? The guy who invented this, I had to look this up. The guy who invented this, the infinite scroll in 2006, he regrets it very much. And his name is, I'll say his name is Asa Raskin. He's ashamed of himself. And he worked at a company with the name sounds a bit ironic now, Humanized. Okay. And he has expressed significant regret about this. And here's another something that is a book that I just got today. There's a few that I got. It's called The Extinction of Experience. It says, reclaiming our humanity in a digital world. So, human-centered design and digital sometimes doesn't get it very well. I have a lot of books here that you may want to look into that have inspired me. Okay, but then there's also, of course, AI, which is sucking a lot of air out of the room, actually all the air out of the room. So the question now is how to respond to this approach. How because indeed AI is creative in a way, right? I mean, they say it's hallucinating, but on the other hand, these hallucinations could be looked upon as a sort of creativity, right? So AI is creative in that sense. So I think in order to respond to do you want me to stop briefly or shall I just continue?
Well, they can still hear you.
Okay, so well, that's most important, I think. Good thing I have no slides. The commodification that has happened, so it's becoming common good. One way to respond to that is, of course, to go more into specialization, and I think what 11 Ways is doing, right, is specializing in accessibility. What we at Namahn will be doing is also specialization. Okay, now we'll briefly talk about Namahn. So we have to rethink the agency. We are under a lot of pressure, economic pressure. And we are repositioning ourselves as advisors for organizations in decision making in complex situations. I didn't say design yet, right? So I'm focusing a lot more. What does the client expect from us? What kind of impact do we hope to have on our clients? So helping them in making decisions in complex situations. And then there's two parts. One, long-term decision-making, where we help leaders go through a journey of a couple of weeks to, inspired by systems thinking, to make decisions about complex matters. Nothing digital there, right? And this is our practice in systemic design. Many of you know this, where one of the partners here at Namahn wrote this book, and so that's for strategic long-term thinking, not necessarily digital. Then there's the other part, where we help in decision-making for the short term, maybe for the real time. And there we design user interfaces for controlling factories, for controlling planning, for doing very complex stuff. So where the decisions need to be made in the moment, and they are very critical, they're very difficult, because there's so many things you need to take into account. What's happening out there in the world, in your factory, in airspace, with your pipelines, and we want to focus on infrastructure. So not only just decision making in complex matters, but also infrastructure as a domain of specialty. So no consumer work, right? Infrastructure, because it makes things happen. It makes things possible in the world. And that's why we like to work in infrastructure. A lot of our clients right now are, of course, in infrastructure. But then we also need to lean into AI. Take it very seriously, because in these domains, long-term and also short-term decision-making, AI is playing a role and will play an increasingly important role. And now a brief plug. Somewhere in May, we will be delivering a half-day training on how to use AI for helping you in doing design work. Okay, that will be announced on our website sometime next week or so. Okay. Good. So that was that bit. Okay, now let's go into the data, compute, and algorithms. The numbers are mind-boggling. How much data is being ingested. These big foundation model providers are squeezing every gram of information that they can get out of the internet and elsewhere. The compute is amazing. I mean, the power, there's hundreds of thousands of chips are being put to work, each chip costing a small car. That's what an NVIDIA chips cost, tens of thousands of euros. and the algorithms that are being used, they manipulate billions and maybe in the future trillions of parameters at the same time. So, it's like the universe. You can't imagine how big it is, right? So my question is to you, when AI came up, what did you find the most striking? What surprised you? It said, whoa. I mean, it certainly was sufficiently advanced to be magical, right? It was incredible. And
the rate of adoption is pretty high as compared to looking at the different other technologies.
The rate of adoption was tremendous. Yes, it was just, and it was worldwide. It was free, and it was, everybody got blown off their seats. Right? But what exactly blew people off their seats? Conversational quality, maybe. I mean, what surprised me was what a linguist would call anaphora, and what a computer scientist would call statefulness, meaning when I went into the conversation, the bot remembered what I said previously. That didn't happen before, right? And that was so surprising, and also that's called the context window or the memory. Also, that is increasing. Initially, it was just a few sentences, but now you can load, as you all know, reams of books into the context window or the memory. Take your notebook LM, and so also that is increasing. So you'll be able to commit your whole life at some point in time into the context window, and then your conversation will be not only referring to what you said, a few minutes ago, but what you said 2 years ago, which is sort of interesting. Okay, now. What are designers supposed to do with all of this? Well, a few things. First of all, I think you should be familiar with the concept of human-centered AI. And there's a very good institution called the Stanford Institute Center for Human-Centered AI. I'll put the reference in the notes, right? Which has been doing a lot of work about this, and they know a lot of stuff. So there's a lot of good materials. They have talks that they record and that are available for you, and I will refer to a specific one later. You also are certainly aware, if you follow this a little bit, that the EU AI Act has calls for human-centered AI. You will not find anything about UX there. It's mostly about what's called alignment. Okay, so aligning what the AI wants, because it does things, maybe not explicitly one, but it does things, and that the things that it does are aligned with what people need. So this is about safety. It's about interpretability, right? Can we tell what the machine did? About transparency, about representation engineering, and there is Fari, which is in Brussels. We're in Brussels, right? Fari is an institute for the AI for the common good. It's a joint venture, sort of subsidized by the EU between the VUB and the ULB, and they do a lot of talks about AI. And if you want to, it's very close by. They're quite good. I can recommend them. So that's what you can do, but also be aware of the new frontier. And the new frontier is one of them is agentic AI, where the AI is not just talking to you, but also doing things for you. It becomes an agent, right? Which is why, again, William Gibson's book Agency is so. Okay, that's the new frontier is not in the design of pixels or flows on a screen, right? That's going to be like the fax. It's still there, right? Or like the radio. It is still there, even getting a revival now via podcasts. But there is something happening there, right? There is a shift happening. And if you want to be a player in UX, and there will be a UX, right? But it not be on screens, okay? And my position here, and it would not surprise you, is that it's in the design of conversations. So there is this topic of if you can look it up, right? Conversational AI design. It's a whole world that opens with a lot of research, a lot of things going on. So what does that mean, conversational AI design? It's not pixels, right? It's not visual design. You design personalities. You design how you will relate to this machine, to this thing, right? And maybe open a brief parenthesis. I catch many people calling bots him, right? Now, in the Germanic languages, we have the privilege of having a neutral, right? There is it, right? Let's call it it, right? And so, of course, the Romanistic languages do not have it. But surprisingly enough, in Farsi, Persian, right, they don't have neutral, they don't have feminine, they don't have masculine. It's all ooh. It's just one. It's gender neutral. So the Persians have it easy. They just use any Persian speakers in the room? Yes. Okay. Well, there you go. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Congratulations. So conversational AI design. So how do you design a conversation? How do you go about doing this? So first of all, you have to give it a role, right? It could be a teacher, a coach, a student, a peer, a friend, an opponent, a lover, a challenger, right? There is a lot of this. There's AI friends. You must be aware of this, right? It's huge. It's becoming huge. Tens of millions of people building serious relationship with AI friends. Okay, there's a whole industry there. How do you want this AI to behave to its users? Do you want them to be, sycophantic, meaning, oh yeah, you're great, right? ChatGPT does that, right? And this is a great idea this is such a great question you ask me. Do we really like that? How do you not get on people's nerves? Like Clippy, the Microsoft Clippy, got on your nerves, or the ChatGPT gets on my nerves sometimes. Anthropic Claude much less so. Anthropic Claude has a very pleasant personality. How do they do that? Right? I go to Claude, although technically ChatGPT may be superior. So also, how do you build trust? How can the bot convey what to expect of it? I was asking a complicated question to Claude a while ago about languages and law systems and countries in the European Union, and it proposed to me, to my surprise, to build a little React component which explained it all in an application. I said, yes, go ahead. So that was surprising, and I said, whoa, you can do that too, right? And so how do you sort of trade control between the person and the bot? Who takes initiative? This is called co-piloting. It's called turn-taking, trading control. So you may have noticed that in these last few weeks, your bots have been more audacious in asking you questions at the end, right? Yeah, is that because they feel confident enough not to insult you with those questions? The people who trained the bots, right? Because there's a lot of training going on there. Don't think it's all automatic, right? There's a lot of human work there, a lot of human work behind the. And I'll talk about that later a little bit. Okay. Now, in order to design conversations, in order to create these personalities, these personas, if you know what I'm saying, yes, how to do this, and where to get inspiration. And I haven't been reading up on these, but I just offer it to you, right? There's something called social linguistics, right? How is language used in social contexts? You want the bots to behave appropriately, right? in line with the conventions, which are different all across the world. So cultural sensitivity is very important. We should not all be, if you, for example, take the Notebook LM from Google, which generates based on text that you put in a podcast interview, right? Between two, they're very annoying, right? These two people, man and a woman, talking to each other. It's not appropriate for a European context. I wish I could switch a dial and tone down the enthusiasm, guys, in the podcast. That was, there is affective science, which is another source of inspiration, which is the psychology of emotions, which is an interesting one. Pragmatics, which focuses on how context influences meaning in communication. I talked about the context window previously being something really important, all the memory that the bot has built about you and the conversations you had in the past. So that should influence your communication to a certain extent. Maybe there should be selective forgetting every once in a while. Forgiveness, I don't know, right? And then there's psychotherapy, which is certainly interesting because, this is the book. The first bot was built by this guy. It was called Eliza. And this book by Joannes Vandermeulen, this is 1976. Luxemburg's Eliza was based on patterns of Q&A in what's called patient-centered psychology. Yeah, it was in the 40s and in the 50s. So, this bot that he built, which was extremely simple, based simply on a rule-based, very simple natural language processing, people could not get enough of it because it was so interesting, because it always asked questions back from the audience and always kept the conversation going. It was so surprising. And there's also, I didn't know this word before yesterday, gelotology, meaning the science of humor, right? Have a bot ever made you laugh? It's ridiculousness, yes, but really made you laugh because it made a good joke? No, right? It's an incredible sign of intelligence, right? Understanding the context, what somebody said before in the group, that you can make a joke that makes people crack. It's very, very difficult to do, as I'm proving today. Okay. Thank you. Now, which tools are going to be available? And we're almost going to go into Q&A. It's not going to be Figma, right? And I don't know if there are any tools now for conversational design, but I do know that the foundational model providers, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, and those guys and girls, they have tools for this. Because what comes raw out of the pre-training, as it's called, right? GPT is the pre-trained, right? The pre-trained transformer. What comes out of the pre-training, with all these computers spent, is worthless. It needs to be fine-tuned. They call it fine-tuning. So they shape the personality of their large language model to be a fit for conversation. And when I read about this, I see that people talk about this as if it is fine-tuning. It is teaching. It's not engineering. It's not if then else, right? It's pruning, cutting, right? What is appropriate? Slowly growing the model. And one interesting technique, I think, which you should remember, maybe delve a little bit deeper in, and I'll put in a reference to an excellent lecture published by this Stanford Institute on human-centered AI. It's not published yet, but it will be published in a few days, where engineers from OpenAI, one of the founders of OpenAI, who then left to start up Anthropic from Claude, right? And somebody from OpenAI talk exactly about this topic, about prompting and reinforcement learning. Oops, that's me telling I have to stop. Prompting, and it's called reinforcement learning from human feedback. RLHF. Yes or no?
Please.
Yes, I can turn it down. Yes, okay. So I will put a link to this reinforcement learning through human feedback, because I believe that there will be tools on the market in 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now where you will be able to shape the personality of a bot with tools which are simplified versions of the ones that are used by these thousands of people who are right now trying to shape the language models in such a way that they have a nice personality, you can have a good conversation with them. Okay, and now I would like to finish by repeating that the world is highly unpredictable, it's fast moving, the situation is not stable. The worst AI that you've ever seen is the AI that you are using now. It's going to get better every time. It's easy to make predictions, as I just did, but it's difficult to put it to work. And deciding it on a timeline is particularly hard. As I demonstrated when I wrote an article about agentic AI, trust and well-intended deceptions, statefulness, congestion, charging, autonomous driving, and statistics-based personalization, although I didn't always use those names. I left a copy of this article over here. Don't try to use the fax number or the CompuServe email address to give me feedback. They don't work anymore. Then I wrote it in 1994, which proves my point that it's easy to make predictions, but hard to act upon those predictions at the right time. Here's an article with a nice picture of myself 30 years younger and with an English translation as well. Thank you very much. But we do have questions on it, still a little bit?
No, yeah, we do.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Go ahead.
questions or comments? Comments are welcome too. Oh, yes. Oh, well, you went well. Oh, in the back. Yes. Go ahead in the back. Mm-hmm.
I just have one comment about.
Oh yeah, maybe the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait.
There wasn't. No, like. Can I? Exactly.
Yeah, by the way, I brought some books here that I found inspiring. Some of them I read them, others not. But about AI and all of that stuff. There's also some science fiction. Hey, Peter. Okay, go ahead. Your question.
If everybody is hears me. So I just want to add one comment about when you said that actually when the AI is hallucinating, being creative. I think we should take that with a bit grain of salt because it's not really creating anything. It's just when it is not knowing exactly the answer, it's just statistically predicting the next potential answer.
I totally agree. But do you know what I don't know what I'm gonna say in 10 seconds from now. I'm improvising as well. I'm just improvising all the time. So it's not. I'm not very deterministic. I wouldn't apply any consciousness to them. I definitely want to call it it. But statistically, it's similar in a way. Okay. But honestly, I don't want to get into the discussion about consciousness or extinction and that sort of things. It would take us on a completely different path, if you don't mind. Okay.
Maybe after that.
Yes, yeah, we can definitely out there. Yeah, definitely.
I want to participate in that.
Yeah, I'm curious. Okay, more questions.
Yes, I'm just riffing off what you said. I haven't given this a lot of thought. I'm curious, the way we think about developing like digital solutions, there is the computer side of things and then there's the human side.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us that work in UX, I'm sure all have the situation where like those of us that deal with people, when we present something to the engineers who don't deal with people, their solutions are often just not good.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't anticipate all of the things we've seen in like testing and all this. What you're talking about seems to be moving from a direction of computer-human interaction to like near human-human interaction, because you're talking about switching from like UIs to conversations.
Yes.
So currently, we have a class of people that are good at conversations. They're called like social butterflies, and they don't need to study this. They're just good at talking to people. And there's us who are not so good at talking to people, at least stereotypically, the engineers. Do you see, so like you mentioned, for example, humor research, right? Yet there are stand-up comedians who didn't have to do humor research, they're just naturally funny. And yet I would also venture to say that sometimes a person is funny not because like they put words in the correct order, but because we find their life interesting.
Mhm.
You know, their parents got divorced and that's why they're, etc. So there's like this deeper layer which AI can't really touch. Do you see the kind of practitioner that will be doing this work changing, considering that this is going more towards like social interactions?
Yeah. I think high EQ would be, and I now realize I'm actually not carrying you, Mike.
They understand you.
Oh,
They
okay,
hear.
yeah, right. There is, I think, for conversational design, I think you need a high EQ than you would need for, say, visual design, right? So yes, the skill set the craft will be changing. You will be inspired by other domains, but this tension between us designers who want to take the technology in the human direction and those doing the work on the statistics, that tension will always remain there, and it's a healthy tension because sometimes the developers are creative as well, right? And they can bring us new ideas that can oh, that's unfortunate. Somebody at the door. Yes, I will shut it down if I can. Not quite.
But do you foresee emotional intelligence, for example, as a requirement on a CV within the next 10 years?
Well, yeah, I think it would be very useful to put it on a CV, but they're not going to believe you until until you have the meeting, right? Yeah. But yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that I answered your question completely, but your comment was interesting. That's for sure. Yes, Federica.
So I was thinking, I think I heard or read
Maybe the
somewhere-
microphone. Yeah. Is it okay?
Last question.
Yeah, I think I heard or read somewhere that there is sort of in the early stage of development of the technology, there's always a phase where it is textual. So for example, with computers, like the terminal, and then it became a graphic interface. And so I'm just wondering, I mean, I don't even know if this is, I think it went this way in other instances, but if it's worth investing so much in like having sort of a personable terminal instead of moving on to paradigm shift.
Yeah, I fair point, an interesting perspective, and of course, text is much easier to manipulate than images, certainly moving images, and it's a natural fit with the programming language, right? Although the generative AI also applies to images, as you know, with diffusion models, it's quite different. But if you go back into history, I mean, very far, there was language before there was writing. And I mean, voice mode, as it is now available on ChatGPT, is great, right? You just talk, right? So there's no text even, there's just language you're talking. And so I believe there's a room for both. I'm not saying at all that visual displays will not exist anymore, not at all, but there will be a complementary interaction between complementary modes where you will be talking and listening to your computer and looking at things that it presents, or you will show things, of course, which is coming up now. You will show the world to the computer, and the computer will help you get along. So, but I'm just saying that the conversational, I may put a great emphasis on conversational AI design to make a stark contrast with the screen design. Both will exist. I mean, the radio is still there, right? Even if there is TV or the internet, and fax. Actually, there is still fax, right? Not that number. So these technologies will coexist for a very, very long time because obviously in visual you can grasp a lot more. In one visual human system is great, right? And you want to continue exploiting that, but together with this sort of very pleasant interaction with a simulated person. Yes, and then your question. Yes, and then that's the last one.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. You've approached a bit like where the world is going.
Mhm.
And I was curious, and I'm going to try to keep it short. If you're approached by EHEC, the school, yes, exactly, as their strategic advisor to redesign their curriculum, what would be maybe seven classes that you would include into their curriculum?
Oh, okay. So yeah, you want to have give me a list of 7 classes you would like to include.
Based on all the everything that you
I
shared.
would.
Sounds like a
Well, I would definitely. I would definitely go for a good understanding of how the technology works. I mean, that's fundamental, I think, because you need to be able to talk to developers and engineers. You need credibility. So you don't need to be able to do the statistics or understand the statistics. You don't need to be able to be a developer, but you must speak their language, right? So because you got to work with them. So a very good understanding of that bit. On the one hand, and then of course I would add a course on tools for conversational AI design, right? And then in the middle, some courses on the more philosophical bit, which is what we do not want to talk about, right? It's the consciousness, because you want to have a conversation about that, right? You want to be able to respond to that, or at least have an opinion. There's some books about that here, but also tools as they evolve. I mean, I found out about consensus recently. I started really liking Claude and its evolving capabilities. You must have heard about Notebook. I mean, these tools are coming all the time. And so making your students, you teach at that school, yes. Okay. Make the students aware of the latest tools, which will require a teacher, who keeps updates his course every single year, right? Because it'll be moving extremely fast. So I'm not at 7, but maybe at 4 or 5 already. Huh? So, any other ideas? What should be taught at EX?
ethics.
Ethics. Oh yes, of course. Thank you, Clementina.
Maybe cinema also. I think the industry of cinema, they are so used to craft characters and persona. I think they will have a role in crafting those imaginary.
Yes. So how do we call that science? Theatrics? Rhetorics?
Dramaturgy.
Dramaturgy. Yes, that's it. Yes. Scenario writing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Filmmaking. Yeah. Movie making. Other things, and I think we should really close now. Huh? Okay. So thank you for the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.